Oh, yes. Let's freaking go. LSU is looking to sell the naming rights basically to their team. Because when you think LSU football, what do you think? You think the iconic uniforms, right? It's the first thing you think about. Well, they are going to sell jersey sponsorships like you see in the NBA and like you see in European soccer, like you see in the WNBA, like you see in quite a few different sports. Per NOLA News, here via On3, LSU is looking to sell jersey sponsorships. Now, how should you feel about that? Very good. And I'm going to tell you why. Okay. I totally get it. Totally get it. You do not want this infringing on your product. Everything is sponsored. I have sponsors. In a perfect world, I would have a gazillion subscribers that subscribe to my Patreon every single week and not have any sponsorships. But the truth is, even if I did have that much money, you are always going to want more money. It doesn't matter who you are. LeBron James is set to make $52 million next year from the Los Angeles Lakers. And he still does 2 podcasts, ads for DraftKings, ads for Nike, and so on and so on. So even with all the changes, LSU inevitably was going to want more money. But what has actually happened over the past couple of months? Massive changes. And no matter who you talk to, at the top, when you start to have to cut salary and start having to share more of the pie with employees, and in this case, employees are players, even though they're not technically employees, the powerful people that actually make the money at LSU, they're going to look to make it up in other different facets. And what's one way you could do it? Jersey sponsorships. All right. I have no problem with it. It could be, though, that my favorite sport growing up, I say growing up, but it kind of took over a good bit of my high school, was European soccer. I'm a huge Liverpool fan. I am so accustomed to the uniforms having massive sponsorships on the front that when the NBA started bringing in jersey patch sponsorships, it didn't really bother me. It also didn't really bother me when over the past couple of decades, you have seen a Cheez-It bowl patch, you've seen a Chick-fil-A bowl patch, and so on and so on. I don't think it's going to affect you as much as you think it would. I have seen quite a few people not happy about it. But I do think there is a difference with having one patch on your uniform compared to multiple sponsorships on one uniform like you see in different professional sports like the WNBA. But if it's just one patch, it's fine. NASCAR, yeah, it's a lot. Where it's logo here, logo here, logo here, logo here. But I am for it. 1,000%. If it means LSU is making more money by basically doing nothing. Same thing with the sponsorships that are going to be on the field. It's probably not going to affect you as much as you think it would. And on top of that, it's more money to the university, which in turn means more money towards rosters and so on and so on. So in a perfect world, I, of course, would prefer to not have any sponsorships on. I don't think anybody prefers to add sponsorships to the jerseys. But I do think it will happen, and I don't think it's as big of a deal as you would probably think so. I do think it gets a little jumbled if you do two. And I don't think LSU is going to do two. Because the standalone value of just one, if I were Todd Graves, that is totally worth whatever it would be. I'm guessing that number for the jersey sponsorships is probably going to be around $2 million, but I would pay up to 5 to 10. Now, obviously, you saw the thumbnail. I don't know which brand is actually going to do this. I do think LSU has a few people in mind. Quite a few people have said Raising Cane's. I don't think Cane's is going to do it. I don't think so. And have a lot of different reasons as to why. Even though I love Raising Cane's and I would love that. I think it would go hand in hand pretty well. I also hope the sponsorship that is actually decided upon with LSU, because this one is more important than all the others, because it's going to be on every single highlight and every single thing that you do see. I hope it is a brand that is non-controversial. And I have no problem with controversial people, whether it's people in sports media, politics, anything like that. I don't mind it. It's just with this, I would hope it is a little more apolitical. So I think LSU is going to do really thorough research on it. And look, one thing LSU could do is they can go to Nike and say, look, do y'all want to double it to where there's no sponsorships and it's just your logo on it? Sure. Let's go for it. Let's go for it. I think Nike would at least listen to that. But I am pro jersey sponsorship. Another thing I am pro is taking a look at recent history. So I had the good fortune of going on a Mississippi radio station with a very talented radio host named Jake Wimberly. And I did a long thread today on DJ Lagway, who is a quarterback that LSU will play early on in the season. There is a piece of me because I shared earlier this week on Blake's show and then partially last night with our guest, Michael Felder, one of our best guests we've ever had. I know I say that about everyone, but our guest, Felder, and I have done a gazillion radio segments. He had just never been on here before, and we changed that. One of the more successful college football media members we have had on here. You know what's interesting? I feel the SEC quarterback play has gotten better. Not necessarily in terms of who the best quarterback actually is, but who the worst quarterback actually is. And the thing that's very interesting, because I opened up a thread on this, and we'll dive even deeper on this tomorrow. We tend to over-romanticize the quarterbacks from yesteryear and the LSU defenses from yesteryear. Because what happens is we only remember the best quarterbacks that we play. You know, when you talk to LSU fans, you will quickly learn that LSU fans know that we dominated Johnny Manziel twice. We beat Lamar Jackson in a bowl, and he had a terrible game. We beat Patrick Mahomes, albeit he had an amazing game versus us. We still beat him pretty badly. And we know that we did well historically versus elite QBs. Now, some of the better SEC quarterbacks, like an Aaron Murray, had some of their best games versus us. But you go down the list, more often than not, LSU would have success versus the elite quarterbacks. Most recently, a dominant defensive performance versus an elite Heisman Trophy winning quarterback was Bryce Young just a few years ago. So one thing that we tend to do is we look back at those 2010 to 2014 LSU defenses, and those defenses are better than our current defenses, but they also had the good fortune of playing absolutely terrible quarterbacks. Absolutely, positively terrible quarterbacks. Does anyone off the top of their head remember a quarterback for Kentucky by the name of Patrick Towles? Or if I were to ask you right now, whoever you are watching this, whether it's live, listening on Spotify, whatever. Do you know which SEC team Chris Relf played for? LSU had the good fortune of playing him twice. He was ass. Or what about Treon Harris? This year, there is no Treon Harris. There is no Chris Relf. There is no Patrick Towles on the schedule, which gets us back to DJ Lagway. While I think DJ Lagway is very overvalued going into next year, it's not that I don't like him. It's that respected college football media members, like the biggest right now, Josh Pate, has DJ Lagway as the number one quarterback in the SEC. Number one. Really? He had a 57 QBR last year. 57. So while I do think DJ Lagway is overvalued, of the quarterbacks that are returning, that are on LSU's schedule next year, DJ Lagway has the lowest QBR by a wide margin of 57. I'll show it to you right now. But first, we say hi to John Sibley. We say hi to Cliff, Isaiah, Chance. Good to see each and every one of you. Had a great phone call earlier today with Mr. John Sibley Butler. And I understand a lot of us are not happy about the jersey sponsorship stuff. But this was a thread I had on Twitter earlier today about DJ Lagway. But I want you to take a look at this middle portion. If DJ Lagway is the worst quarterback LSU plays next year, they're in a lot of trouble. They're in a lot of trouble. So Lagway, I don't think will be the worst. I would actually lean towards Lagway for LSU schedule's sakes, being a top 3 or 4 quarterback on this schedule. But in terms of ESPN QBR, he's the worst that is returning. Now, I didn't include Austin Simmons and Ty Simpson because they just didn't play enough games to have a respectable QBR. I also don't think Marcel Reed is as good as a 75.1 QBR shows. 75 is normally a really, really, really good mark. I would consider him probably a 70-ish QBR. I'm taking Pavia over Reed. I'm taking Sellers definitely over Reed. I'm taking Mateer over Reed as well. I could see Marcel Reed not even finishing the season as Texas A&M starting quarterback next season. The point, though, still remains the same. I think LSU is in a really, really, really good spot with that, okay? I really do think so. Let's see. Now, all right, so it just broke. I was making sure we got the news in. LSU did just land another 5-star. Okay? So we'll talk about him coming up. He's out of Florida. Pass rusher, we talked about him briefly, I believe, on Sunday night. And I'm really excited about that. All right, so coming up in a moment, we'll break down what I think about him. Obviously, I've changed my overall views on high school recruiting and how much I'll talk about it, but this one is a pretty big deal. I'll also give you a few thoughts on another recruit that LSU is after.
Let's go!
On a journey together with Zion Imaging, I want you to see this experience up close. And me as a wedding and event DJ, I watched how everybody had so much fun with Zion Imaging. And a big reason for their success is the team. Yes, Jaron Thomas and his family started this off as a passion project, and they have one simple goal in mind: taking your event to the next level. Whether it's a wedding, reunion, quinceañera, school, or corporate event, Zion Imaging is all about family-friendly fun. And I gotta show you on this tour the high-level technology that quickly sends your video session to your phone, whether it's iPhone or Android. Yes, it's the Zion Imaging 360 spin booth experience serving North Texas, North Louisiana, South Arkansas, Orlando, and more. Give us a call, 318-469-4265. Check us out on Facebook or book us at Zion Imaging, XYANimaging.com. Are you a die-hard LSU fan? And would you like to understand the complex game of football better? Well, sign up today for our PHL Patreon. This is his second touchdown. Counter G, why you're pulling the guard. We dive deep on recruiting and the transfer portal at a level that you have never seen before. Film breakdowns from so many different angles, and my personal favorites, oh yeah, the analytics, baby. I like to get nerdy. We take a look at cutting-edge statistics that help all of us understand LSU football even better. And guess what? Every new sign-up gets a Joe Burrow card in the mail for free. But we got to save the best for last. Our private Discord community of LSU fans from around the globe. Sign up today. Patreon.com/LSU football and put your name on our wall of patrons. Special thanks to everybody who's on here. Let's freaking go. Alrighty, so a quick discussion here about Trenton Henderson, a 5-star per 247's metrics, but an overall 4-star composite recruit. So I'll play some of his footage in the background coming in from Florida. Obviously, you'll see a lot of 2-point stances. I remember watching this the other day. I'll rewind it. Again, this is an absolutely terrible call. Which is why high school refs are high school refs. They call targeting there, which it wasn't. That was an absolutely clean hit. So this is a guy who's played a lot of college, high school football in a 2-point stance. Obviously, LSU doesn't have a whole lot of 2-point stances from their defensive ends in the system that Blake Baker likes to run, but they do it some. And then obviously you'll see throughout his footage here, he does have hand in the dirt footage as well. When I watched him, you'll see when you're an elite recruit, you don't really play a lot of offensive linemen that are even close to your size. As you can see right there, that Puller probably weighs 190, and he does not, Trenton Henderson. One thing you do see is a lot of pass deflections. There is a clip later in this one where you see him getting low and bending the edge versus a smaller offensive lineman, which is something you like to see. One thing that is a little concerning from time to time when watching a high school recruit is they play such small linemen that bad habits happen when you just run through them on every play. You see him right there. He stripped the ball carrier and was able to score. But he does get low on some of these clips, which is what you have to do, obviously, at the collegiate level, because you're going up against offensive tackles that are your size and are better matchups for you. This was a game that they were losing 20-3. He blocks a field goal and makes it interesting in the fourth quarter of this game. So a big-time gamer. You see a few special teams play. Here he is lined up at corner. Which is obviously rare from a pass rusher. It's not something LSU's going to do a lot of, but they do drop their ends into coverage as well. This was a fun watch for me. I didn't really sit down and comb through some of the full game footage I like to do, but now I will do that now that he's definitely signed in, or I say signed in, committed in here with LSU. But a really, really, really fun watch. From top to bottom, this 2026 class is shaping up very nicely. Now, what is very interesting is LSU in the 2025 class brought in so many off-ball linebackers. And this isn't an off-ball linebacker. This is more of an edge player. I do know that LSU is very interested to see what its edge depth actually looks like after this next year. Jamari Butler, who I think is going to be a good player, he only has 1 year of eligibility left. Jack Pyburn only has 1 year of eligibility left. Patrick Payton only has 1 year of eligibility left. So if all 3 of these players are committing or are leaving, excuse me, there is a lot of open playing time alongside the theoretical Gabriel Relaford next year. It is also interesting. LSU still has Damian Shanklin on its roster, who they like a lot, top 100 recruit, just changed his jersey number to 17. And they still have CJ Jackson, who just switched to number 14. So we'll see how those guys develop going into next year, but you should feel really, really, really good about LSU's edge depth going into next season. I'm pumped up about it. I really, really, really am. But you see a lot of batted balls from number 7. Now, he won't be wearing number 7 his first season, as many of you know, unless LSU thinks he's special, like Leonard Fournette when he was given number 7, basically right when he got to LSU. Let me pull up SEC LSU right now, number 3 class. And I want to show you this from On3. Their rankings for Trenton Henderson are a little all over the place. And it's not their rankings, it's all the rankings. So On3 has him as a top 100 recruit. 247 has him as a top 35 star. ESPN has him as a top 100 recruit. And Rivals, obviously Rivals is joining On3, so there's going to be some changes in the rankings there. Rivals did not view him as highly as the other services. So I wonder if that is going to change. But per On3, this is their 3rd highest ranked recruit in this class. Per 247, this is their 2nd highest ranked recruit for LSU in this class. So a really nice pickup. Obviously, at this point, LSU did not have an edge in this class, and they go get one, 6'4", 225. That is the ideal height and weight for a rising junior going into next year. So really excited about that. Really, really, really am. Okay. Now, I do also want to talk about how revenue sharing is going to change some things up as far as this is concerned. The Florida guys, when they were reporting on this, and I reached out to my good buddy with the Gators, they were talking about LSU's NIL package for Henderson. You can always see a world where Florida's like, hey, we'll double the salary. We are desperate for edge rushers. Florida was very much in this recruitment. I know Michigan was definitely in this mix for him. I do think LSU will hold on to him because they really, really, really do like this kid. That was repeated to me over the past 24 hours. Okay, so it is very, very, very interesting. Now, we'll do a film study. We'll post it up this weekend. But when I watched him yesterday, I really did enjoy it. I listened to a few interviews he did with Sam Webb, who is a very good Michigan reporter. He actually did 2 different interviews with Trenton Henderson, and they were both pretty impressive. So I'm really looking forward to it. Now, another thing that's it's going to be very interesting is when you come in, are you going to be willing to be coached hard? If you are, then you're going to be a really good player. All right. But if not, this probably isn't the best fit for you. Kevin Peoples is, I wouldn't say strict. That's not the right word. But he demands a lot out of his edge position. Got to be willing to be coached hard. So obviously, he could go anywhere he wants. It is very important, though, to really buy in and take his coaching, because I really do think Coach Peoples is a real deal. I do. Okay. Hmm. 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 Let's see. Let's go to TJ. If patches help us, and we'll go back to the jersey patches. This was the thing that really piqued my interest today. We'll do a separate Trenton Henderson video. I'll also be completely honest. I totally forgot he was committing tonight. I really, really, really did. He did a whole 247 announcement. So I would have pushed the live stream back and probably just did a whole live stream around it. But it did slip my mind today. So my apologies for that. But it's funny because I did spend a good bit of time listening to interviews and watching him earlier this week. But let's go back to TJ, because the jersey patching is very, very, very relevant. If patches help us win and keep up with NIL and win an Addy, they could put 40 of them on there. But that's the thing. I am opposed to two patches. One, I'm perfectly fine. No one's recruiting ranking will ever vary more widely than Willie Allen. That's a deep cut. Willie Allen's career was indeed very interesting. Now, here's what I would say about the jersey patch thing. All right. The truth about football uniforms and football aesthetics is that minimalism looks better. It always has and always will. The more basic and clean your uniforms look, the better they normally are. Perfect example, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who remembers that weird type font with all the different colors and all of that? Didn't look great. They go to the more basic block numbering. They look amazing. You never want a football uniform in particular to be too busy. That normally goes for quite a few uniforms. You never want too much going on with any uniform. Just give me the number, maybe some trim on the shoulder pads, and normally it's going to work out pretty well for you. One patch really doesn't do a whole lot, but two, it gets a little jumbled. But TJ, I know you're being sarcastic, but I also know of quite a few people who don't really give a damn. They're of that same mindset. Hey, put as many jersey patches you want on any jersey, and we'll take it. Isaiah, I want to go back to your comment. You said this year feels different, but in a good way. So look, it is interesting. I look at what Garrett said earlier at the Manning Passing Academy about this team being the most together. This team is very together, which sounds counterintuitive because of all the portal entries, but they are together. How do I know this? Well, I've spoken to a few of the transfers. I've also spoken to a few of the transfers' parents, and they have reiterated that same thing. Now, that doesn't mean anything until the games actually get played. Tomorrow, a very sharp college football mind, probably one of my favorite betting college football analysts, Chris Bear Felicia. I'll try to get him on here. But There was a YouTube video. It's not really been watched, but he is actually fading Clemson going into next year. And I've read a few sharps that are fading Clemson just a bit going into next year. I could see Clemson being overvalued. You look at what they did last year. It's kind of remarkable how them getting waxed by Louisville was kind of wiped off the face of the earth. Like, Louisville came in and beat them down. The scoreline was a little misleading. Louisville dominated that game. And it wasn't as if Saints second-round pick Tyler Shuck went out there and burrowed them. It was literally Louisville running the football and just playing better football. And I do think the Texas score was a tad misleading as well. Clemson did a good job, obviously, on the first drive. But after that, it was a lot of Texas. Clemson had a few good fourth down conversions to make that score look a little more interesting. How good is this team? Georgia wiped the floor with them in the season opener. So talking heads like me that are very pro-Clemson, it does raise my eyebrows when sharps like Bear Felicia are saying, hey, can we pump the brakes a little bit on Clemson? Now, how much of that changes for LSU? Well, not a whole lot, because the way Bear Felicia was talking about Clemson earlier today, he was making them sound like an 8-4, 9-3, like solid team, not a bad team, but just a solid team. You know who else was a solid 8-4, 9-3, 7-5-ish kind of team? USC. So just because his overall outlook on Clemson isn't as high as me and other members of the college football media, does not mean LSU is going to go in there and win that game. But what it could mean is that Clemson, as a true national championship contender, isn't really all that great. Because look, we've seen what happened to Florida State after Jordan Travis walked out of that door. And when you think about it, as much as we have pointed to the season opening issues for LSU under Brian Kelly, they kind of ran into a buzzsaw. You played by far the two best Florida State teams since the Jameis Winston era. If you had played last year's Florida State team as a season opener, we wouldn't be talking about the season opening struggles. And you played a USC team that finally got a reasonable defensive coordinator. You played a Chip Kelly coach UCLA team. What if UCLA didn't have Chip Kelly at that time? So LSU had some difficulties when it comes to bad season opener luck with those teams being very good teams. But ultimately, all this rambling is a bunch of excuses mixed in there as well. You need LSU to at least win one of these. All right. Cliff says, yeah, team chemistry is a real thing, but execution and productivity means more. I totally agree. TJ also agrees, saying Cade Klubnik is not the best quarterback in the nation. So our guest last night, Michael Felder, played football in the ACC, has been, to me, one of the best members of the college football media. He's not really sold out. He was very authentic. And he's a former North Carolina guy talking about Belichick. He had some eyebrow-raising comments, to say the least. But it is interesting. I do believe in the Cade hype. I do see a very high likelihood of him being one of the first QBs off the board next year in the NFL draft. But at the same time, I've had some swing and misses on my NFL draft evaluations myself. Some bad ones. I still believe in the Connor Wigman hype train. Now that he's at Houston, a fresh start. We'll see how it goes. But part of it is I've always been a Cade guy. Always been a big Cade guy. Going back to his high school recruitment, I was a big fan of his. Little did I know that we would get to this point. Let's go to Brambo, coming in hot. Folks are really talking about Barian Brown as if he was a 1,000-yard receiver in the SEC. He's never had 1,000 yards. Last year, he had 321 yards. He is a decorated return specialist. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about Barian Brown. All right. This is a very interesting player to break down. So let's start with the beginning of Barian Brown's career. He was a true freshman star. And to this day, the best game he has had was as a true freshman versus the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, this wasn't last year Georgia Bulldogs. We're talking about a Georgia Bulldogs team that won a national championship with Stetson Bennett, okay? This was a really, really, really good defense. And he absolutely torched them really badly in a semi-weird, close game with Will Levis at quarterback. Torched him. Unbelievable in that game. And if you would have watched that game, you would have been like, there's no way in hell that this guy, number one, stays at Kentucky, and then number two, isn't into the NFL draft after his third year. So he has a year two with the new quarterback. Didn't go well. And then last year with Brock Vandagriff, who was the worst quarterback in the SEC, alongside Jackson Arnold. It wasn't pretty. And as Brambo points out, the numbers weren't great. His receiving yards have gone down year after year after year. But let's add some context. You know, we tend to underrate pure volume when it comes to wide receiver play. So let's take someone like Aaron Anderson. Aaron Anderson is with the team that he will always maximize his potential numbers with. He's with a quarterback who doesn't scramble a whole lot. He will more this next season, Garrett Nussmeier. But he plays in the slot with a quarterback who loves to throw over the middle in the intermediate. So Aaron Anderson is with the perfect quarterback for him to play with, especially considering LSU could not run the football. LSU had close to 150 more pass attempts than Kentucky, which was the worst environment to play in if you're a wide receiver. Now, why is that? Well, bad quarterback play. Bush Hamdan, who's more of a pro-style kind of offensive mind. Mark Stoops, who has always run slow, prehistoric game and ball control offense. And at the same time, Barian Brown got out-targeted by Dane Key, who I think is a very good player. Dane Key, of course, the talented wide receiver who also left Kentucky. So Barian Brown had to share targets with Dane Key in a run-first prehistoric offense where there's just not near as many opportunities. So you take a guy like Aaron Anderson, who is going to draw a lot of coverage over the middle because teams aren't going to let Aaron Anderson just slot them to death like he did last year to quite a few teams. Little did we forget, Aaron Anderson almost went out there, and honestly, Garrett missed him for quite a few more targets in that A&M game. That was going to be Aaron Anderson's big national coming out party with that 75-yard touchdown. Now Barian Brown gets to be in that environment where he's going to have Chris Hilton opposite him quite a bit. And with Chris Hilton on the field, Berrien will get to play a lot of these slot roles as not the always clear out outside option. So I think Berrien Brown will have the best season of his career. Now, as far as his weaknesses are concerned, yeah, his production going down, even with all those caveats, is a big concern. It is a concern. Uh, I don't think he's an elite tackle breaker. Uh, you could be as fast as he is. I mean, NCAA gave him 99 speed. Um, but I don't think that's really his game. I think, ironically, some of the weaknesses that Chris Hilton has are the same weaknesses that Berrien Brown has. After the catch, that's not really what they've done up to this point. And then Berrien Brown has had fumble problems in the past. His best game outside of the Georgia game, I would consider the bowl game versus Clemson. He was just torching them, kickoff return, just big game. Then in the fourth quarter, he had a fumble that was very preventable. So it is a bit of a concern. Now, with that said, I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal because they don't need him to be the tackle breaking option. All right. They just don't. So I am high on Berrien Brown going into next year. This is the money year for him. I think, actually, I'll take that back. I know that behind the scenes, LSU has been impressed by his demeanor. I've heard of instances where Berrien Brown wants to put in more work. Sources. Okay. Take that for what it's worth. Because I do think he knows this is his opportunity. Now, as far as Berrien Brown is concerned, what about the hierarchy of LSU wide receivers? Well, we know for certain that Chris Hilton and Aaron Anderson are going to have roles. Part of that is incumbency. Part of that is because of, their chemistry with Garrett. Both of those receivers don't know what it's like to play college football without Garrett Nussmeier as a teammate. That accounts for something. Both of those receivers, one thing you can say about Garrett is there is a bit of a growing pain period normally when you're playing with Garrett. Okay. Where some of it is timing, some of it is you need to be here or there. Obviously, Garrett hit it off with Malik when he would play, but that was sparingly, a lot of mop-up duty types of things. But, because they've had those growing pains and now their connection is really good between, the three of them, that other receiver role is going to be interesting. And then on top of that, for you to get targets for Berrien Brown, you need to beat out two very under the radar players that you normally don't consider target earners. You've got two tight ends that are coming in with receiving chops. It was Barrett Sharp who led Oklahoma in receiving with a 40 reception season. Now, some of that is because Oklahoma had so many receivers just get hurt. So those 40 receptions were kind of volume based. But I don't think people quite understand how hard it is to get 40 catches. You got to get targets from Bauer Sharp. You also got to get targets from Trey'Dez Green. You also have got to get targets away from Xavion Thomas. Two completely different players, but Xavion is still in that room. And then, of course, you have Nick Anderson, you have Kyle Parker. And then, to me, and this was something I brought up earlier today on Mississippi Radio, one thing, even if you think Garrett is going to scramble a little bit more, if the LSU rushing attack isn't where it needs to be, and if the LSU offensive line struggles, one thing that helps both of those things is throwing to the running back out of the backfield. And I do see a world where Caden Durham kind of turns into a Jaden Blue type of player. Jaden Blue, the fantastic Texas running back who torched Clemson last year and got drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. And honestly, I think Caden's better than him. I do think Caden is a better player than Jaden Blue. So that's something else that you have to overcome as a receiver. So, this isn't as much a Barian Brown thing as it is just an overall thing. Part of the reason why you hear me all the time say, I prefer tighter wide receiver rotation, it's because of this, right? It's because of this. And if I were a college football GM, I would so heavily concentrate my money spent on offensive linemen on so many different levels. I feel like I've been rambling so long about Barian Brown, but I love talking about him. He's a very exciting player. I do. What's up, Steven? Look at that, man. That's a great fish, bro. Brandon wants to talk about the run game. Okay, we're down with that. By the way, we do have kind of a hard out tonight at 7. I don't want to be on the wrong side of the wife tonight. Tony, what's good? You prefer originally recruited LSU players or portal guys? Guess what, Brambo? Everybody does. they just do. But I do think, and in particular, I have a favoritism towards 3-star Louisiana kids. I will say, though, I have spoken quite a bit to transfers and their parents. One of the closest relationships I've had with an LSU player over the past couple of years, is with a transfer deep snapper. I just think now, as far as the culture regarding transfers, it's just not as big of a deal playing for this team or that team for this younger generation, because you play so many camps now. There's so many different 7-on-7 camps where you're just showing up with the team and you're with that team, and it's kids from all around. There's a lot more transferring that happens in high school. A lot of these kids play travel baseball and travel basketball. So these jumping around from team to team to team is just more normalized now with all athletics. But I would, and I think Brian Kelly has said this. You would prefer originally recruited high school guys to be the norm. But which team played a lot of originally high school recruited guys? And do you know which team had a lot of those guys get their ass kicked last year because they weren't ready for SEC play? It was us. It was us. And, I see this comment quite a bit. Carter, we should have won that Florida game. We should have beaten Florida last year. Really? You think that? No, we shouldn't have won that game. Sorry. Because we just had too many guys playing that were not ready to play SEC football. And we're not ready. So, and look, Brandon, there's a lot of people that feel the same way that you feel. But in the end, the best 2 players to play for this university over the past 5 to 10 years that won Heisman trophies were not originally LSU football recruits. Now, best is subjective, but I think most of you would say Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels are at least the most important players at LSU over the past 5-ish years. So there you go. And Tony says there's good things about both. I agree. I think there is something to be said about someone coming in and moving things around. You know, I'm such a big Jack Pyburn guy going into next year, where I've put a lot of, you know, of my I wouldn't say reputation, because I get things wrong all the time. I'm just very confident he's going to be a very good player for LSU next year. A lot of it is kind of off the field stuff too. He has really raised the standard of a lot of players. So there you go. Let's see. Ghastly Gamer says the dude you had on last night speaks my language. Yeah, Felder and I, it is amazing how many segments we've done over the years, and this was his first ever like YouTube appearance with me. But he and I are not the same at all. He has a beard, I don't. He gets in fights, I don't. Him telling the story of getting his ass beat by 5 LSU fans is the hardest I have ever laughed on here. Oh my God. It was crazy. Let's go to Pierce. Yeah, I wasn't going to comment on this, but I will now because the great Pierce wants to talk about it. Jacoby Matthews going to Auburn. All right. There's a lot regarding Jacoby Matthews that has happened away from the field. Dating all the way back to his high school recruitment. And it makes no sense that LSU, who had a massive need and still has a need for safety depth, for a 5-star kid out of Ponchatoula High School, to not want him to be a part of LSU when we know he can play in the SEC. Hell, he made an open field tackle versus Jaden Daniels in that 2023 legendary A&M performance from JD5. Jacoby Matthews is a crazy good football player. But I will tell you this, and I will leave it here. There has to be a reason. All right, it would make no sense, especially considering Jacoby Matthews has really good friends on LSU's current team. So why would Auburn take a risk? Well, who has an Auburn going after that was once LSU commits or LSU players? They do it all the time. Going all the way back to Da'Keel Williams. Xavier Debo Atkins, someone who I have a lot of respect for, transferred to Auburn. Tolan, the former linebacker, transferred to Auburn. Defensive lineman recruit out of Georgia, whose name slips my mind, who was a top 100 recruit, ended up flipping to Auburn. And none of them really ended up doing anything. Now, we'll see what happens here, but you know, Auburn goes after quite a few of the players that we don't land or Auburn flips or whatever, and vice versa. So we do not play Auburn next year unless we see him in the playoff for the SEC championship game, which with Jackson Arnold at QB, I doubt will happen. So we'll see what happens. Okay. So we'll take a few more in the next 5-10 minutes. We'll keep this thing going. If not, we will be back tomorrow night. Let's freaking go. Let's see here. We'll play the commitment.
With that being said, for the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be taking my talents to Louisiana State University.
Yes.
There it is. A 5-star edge rusher is headed to Louisiana State University.
He said Louisiana State University, not that LSU mess. Say it by its God-given name. Now, I do want to bring this up. There was another linebacker that LSU was after, J.J. Bush. He ended up going to Arkansas. Okay. Him going to Arkansas, LSU, and Missouri. I don't really think it's that big a deal. I've not watched a single snap of his, so he could be the next Devin White. I don't know. I will say Arkansas's recruiting is a mess. So they went after this Bush kid. The best recruiter on Arkansas staff is their linebacker coach. You know, they landed a pretty big linebacker out of nowhere last year. And they get this kid, T. Will, who ironically is an Auburn legacy. Has done a good job overall as the Arkansas defensive coordinator, but recruiting wise, he is an absolute ace. So you give him a lot of credit for that. But Arkansas just processed a top 100 4-star wide receiver whose parents played at Arkansas. And this is Arkansas. It's one thing if Georgia does that, but Arkansas. I do think there are so many programs that are just all over the place. And is LSU all over the place from time to time? Yes. But, man, you know, our guest yesterday, who's an ACC expert, was talking about Florida State. Whew. But as Kevin points out, if I had to choose between an edge rusher and an off-ball linebacker, and the recruiting rankings are about the same, I'm always taking the edge rusher. Always. And one thing that was very interesting, and it's something that I probably wouldn't do if I were LSU's general manager, but they signed 5 off-ball linebackers in this last recruiting class. 5. That is a really, really, really high number. Now, I know why they did it, and their logic behind it made a lot of sense because you are losing Whit Weeks. He's not coming back for another year after this, even though he can, because he's going to be a first, second, third round pick. He's that good. But the linebacker room is going to be wide open after he leaves. But they signed 5 off-ball linebackers. That is a huge number. Jaden Breaker, Charles Ross, who are borderline top 100 recruits. Keelan Moses, obviously in your own backyard. That makes a lot of sense. CJ Jim Coyley, who was kind of viewed as a hybrid safety-ish kind of type. Think Tylen Singleton, kind of the same thing. And then Zach Weeks, the younger brother of the Weeks brothers. I'm fine with it. But if you sign 5 off-ball linebackers, you landing some in the 2026 class is just not as big of a deal, right? So J.J. Bush is it's not really that big of a deal. It shouldn't be anything you cry over. And Arkansas really wanted him. I mean, Arkansas really wanted him. So there you go. That'll do it for me. We will be live once again tomorrow night. But for real, in the comment section below, Let me know what you guys think about jersey sponsorships. Give me your full thoughts on the matter. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom. Tonight, we are doing Detroit-style pizza. Even though Sophie Cunningham doesn't like Detroit. I don't know why she said that. I've never visited Detroit. I got to go try real Detroit-style pizza. Let's go.